So the UK saw a really interesting development earlier this month because Rishi Sunak decided to appoint as his foreign secretary the former Prime Minister David Cameron. Now this is really weird because Cameron hadn't even been in politics for the last 7 years, so the idea to bring him back caught a lot of people off guard. And it got me thinking about the times when former American presidents have made a soiree back into politics. And that's what we're going to talk about today. In 1797, George Washington left office thinking that he would finally be able to retire. He'd spent the last 22 years serving in some capacity and was ready to go home. In 1798, however, because of rising tensions with France, President Adams would ask Washington to serve as senior officer of the army. Washington agreed, but on the condition that most of the administration would be handled by Alexander Hamilton, his longtime protege, and that he would lead the army if needed, but for the most part he would stay at home. Now, Washington would never see action again, as he died in December of 1799, and we would see a peaceful resolution to the conflict not long. Our sixth president, John Quincy Adams, had a lengthy career before becoming president, serving as an ambassador, senator, and secretary of state. In 1824, he would be elected president, serving from 1825 to 1829, before being beaten by Andrew Jackson in 1828. Less than 2 years after leaving office, he got elected to the House of Representatives, where he served for the next 17 years. While in Congress, Adams was an outspoken opponent of Jackson, slavery, and in the last years of his career, the Mexican-American War. He would die in 1848 while still serving as a member of the House. Martin Van Buren, or our used-up man, was a state attorney general, senator, governor, and vice president before serving as president from 1837 to 1841. In 1840, he would be defeated by William Henry Harrison and left office shortly thereafter. Van Buren would then make 2 attempts to return to the presidency, the first being in 1844, losing the nomination for the Democratic Party to James K. Polk, a dark horse candidate, and the second in 1848, when he would be the nominee for the Free Soil Party. Van Buren received 10% of the vote and won no states. So John Tyler is the only president on this list whose post-office activities included outright treason. Tyler left office in 1845, and between then and the Civil War, would become a respected figure. In 1861, he chaired the Washington Peace Conference, which was meant to find a resolution to the upcoming Civil War. Spoiler alert, they didn't, and Tyler would side with the South in the war. In 1861, he was elected to the Confederate House of Representatives, but died before he could take his seat, remaining the only American president to have been buried with a flag that wasn't American. Millard Fillmore was a representative and comptroller for New York before being chosen as the Whig vice presidential candidate in 1848. He served in that capacity for 15 months before becoming president upon the death of Zachary Taylor. Now, President Fillmore would attempt to regain nomination in 1852, but lost it to Winfield Scott, who in turn lost to Franklin Pierce in the general election. Fillmore left office in 1853 and would be nominated in 1856 to be the head of the anti-immigrant Know Nothing Party. Fillmore came in third in 1856, receiving 21% of the vote and winning the state of Maryland. Andrew Johnson, before becoming president, would serve as a member of the House, governor of Tennessee on 2 separate occasions, senator, and vice president for 6 weeks. Johnson was an unpopular president, and Republicans didn't like him because of his Reconstruction policies, combined with the fact that he had been a Democrat, and Democrats didn't like him because he was the one Southern senator who sided with the Union and worked with Republicans when he agreed to be Lincoln's vice president. He failed to get the Democratic nomination in 1868 and left office in 1869. In 1874, Johnson ran again for the Senate and was elected by the Tennessee state legislature, winning by 1 vote. Johnson was sworn in March of 1875 and partook in the special session that same year. Johnson had negligible impact, as after the special session, he would return home to Tennessee, where he died of a stroke on July 31st. Before becoming president, Grant would serve in the military, seeing service in both the Mexican-American War and Civil War, becoming commanding general of the Army, acting Secretary of State, and eventually being nominated as the Republican nominee for president. He was elected in 1868 and served in office until 1877, leaving with a stained reputation due to many of his appointees. In 1880, Grant would attempt a comeback by trying to regain the Republican nomination. Grant was one of two frontrunners, the other being James G. Blaine. The convention would eventually stall, and the nomination went to the dark horse, James Garfield. Okay, this one is kind of cheating, but we are going to do it anyway because it's my video and I say so. Cleveland served in various positions such as Sheriff of Erie County, Mayor of Buffalo, and Governor of New York. In 1848, he became the first Democrat to be elected president since James Buchanan in 1856. He would serve from 1855 to 1889, losing to Benjamin Harrison. Cleveland remained active in politics and in 1892 secured the Democratic nomination and defeated Harrison in a rematch. Cleveland would preside over the Panic of 1893 and left office in 1897 before dying in 1908. This is probably the most famous example of a president returning to politics. Roosevelt served in the New York State Assembly as a New York City Police Commissioner, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and Colonel of the Rough Riders before he became Governor of New York. In 1900, some politicians in New York were unhappy with Roosevelt, and his progressive reforms would get him nominated as vice president, hoping to make him disappear. 6 months after taking office, President William McKinley would be assassinated in Buffalo, New York. Teddy would serve from 1901 to 1909, and initially said he would not run for a third term, as he considered himself to have already served 2 terms. However, he soon became unhappy with his successor, President Taft, and attempted to wrest the Republican nomination from him. When he failed to win it, he would form the Bull Moose Party and would win second place in the 1912 election, losing to Woodrow Wilson. Roosevelt considered another run in 1920, but would die in 1919 before that could become a real possibility. I lied, and this is probably the most famous example. William Taft served as Solicitor General, Judge on the Court of Appeals, Governor of the Philippines and Cuba, and finally Secretary of War. In 1908, he was chosen as Roosevelt's successor and won the 1908 election. He would serve for 4 years before coming in third place in 1912. He then spent the next 8 years in retirement before President Harding appointed him to Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Important cases in the Taft Court included Olmsted v. United States and Buck v. Bell, to name a few. While serving as Chief Justice, he would swear in 2 presidents, Calvin Coolidge in 1925 and Herbert Hoover in 1929. Taft would resign from the court in February 1930 and died in March of that year. While every president has had a lengthy career after leaving office, these are just some of the ones that really stuck out to me. So please like, subscribe, and comment your favorite examples of presidents who stayed involved after they left office. Please have a great day, and don't forget to like and subscribe.